The appeal of Gundam Wing has never been its story, because its story is really, really, really stupid. Instead, the appeal of Gundam Wing has always been nostalgia for its initial run on Toonami. When Gundam Wing aired, it was the first Gundam series to air on TV, later followed by Universal Century titles like 0079 and the OVAs, eventually followed by G Gundam, which was amazing. Now, I didn't grow up watching Gundam Wing, so when I watched it, I didn't have this bias. And, as I said before, it's really stupid. Sometimes insufferably stupid. But in a way that's kind of entertaining in itself. And while I would never call Wing one of my favorite series, I will say that I didn't hate it. But the real question is, for a TV series with such terrible writing, how did this become the icon of Gundam in the West? Well, that's what we're going to find out. Right away, people usually say that the main draw for Gundam Wing was the pretty boy characters, and unfortunately I can see why entirely. If you want any more evidence of this, just go on fanfiction.net and find any fanfic that pairs two of the Gundam pilots together. So really, that was definitely a draw for the female audience, and the little boys that were also very confused at the time. But this alone was not enough to cement Wing's popularity. See, before Gundam Wing, we didn't really see this genre of robots. Sure, we had Robotech way, way back, but none of the kids watching Toonami would be remembering that. When you get down to it, Gundam Wing, like most Gundam series, is still a war story. And even though it's a very ridiculous war story, of course I'm saying this in comparison to titles that have space psychics, but whatever. The important thing is that it was a genre that kids then hadn't seen. For once on Cartoon Network, the bad guys weren't monsters, aliens, or other robots. The bad guys were other humans in suits. And the good guys got to kill people. And that's what we like to see. Of course, that brings me to another point. When watching Wing, kids felt like they were watching a grown-up show. It wasn't talking down to them, really, because it wasn't meant for that audience. But at the same time, it's simple enough for them to follow. Despite appearing to be morally ambiguous, it's actually played pretty straight, with
You've
the exception
succeeded in
of
your revenge.
maybe
There's no
sex
need now
and
to hide your
traits.
face.
Any
I still
villainous
bring my
characters
personal
that aren't
hatred
used
onto
to
the
are
battlefield.
laughably evil. But again, kids could follow that. Kids could understand that. It's also important to note that in Gundam Wing, we're rooting for the space colonies this time around. Eventually in the series, we're kind of just rooting for everyone, and it really doesn't make too much sense. The idea of a war for independence has been an American ideal since its conception. And while I'm not saying that these kids have been brainwashed into nationalists, I am saying that these kids probably been brainwashed into being nationalists. In fact, you could say this might have been why the original was a little less popular. Since Zeon's fighting a war for independence, that must mean that they're the good guys. At least that's what you would think if you were an idiot, or a child. Now, in comparison to many other anime, I would never say that Gundam Wing had good action, or good animation, or was really that good entirely. But in comparison to other things running on Toonami at the same time, Gundam Wing had action on par with an American action movie. Big over-the-top explosions, glorified battles, one robot against a dozen Leos. It was badass. Of course kids would love that. Even with all this action, they still kept a very low death count for named characters by the end, which means that it was good for TV. There wasn't really any reason to pull Wing off the air. It didn't really cause that many controversies. And it had a positive message of total pacifism. It's a simple, stupid, but simple message for kids to understand. Even within Gundam, there really aren't that many series like Gundam Wing. And in a way, it sort of hit all the right notes for its American audience. That also might have been its downfall, because nothing else got nearly as popular. Although, who knows? If Iron-Blooded Orphans ends up airing on TV, maybe it has a chance.